some provocations with respect to some technical distinctions in the Heideggerian philosophy. Heidegger says explicitly that the authentic and the inauthentic are not to be taken as moral terms in being and time. We've just said in a recent recording that the authentic can be identified with being as truth, or the more accurately stated, the truth of being, which, although it's a later, the phrase appears only later in Heidegger, much later than being in time. According to how I understood Michael Millerman's presentation, he seemed to show that this is somehow what Heidegger's pointing to already in being in time. I'm not sure the exact textual justification, but I don't doubt it. So then the issue would be, what does it mean that we're treating the authentic and inauthentic as morally indifferent, or however one wants to state it? Indifferent might be not the best qualification of moral there, but in other words, so moral would mean the good, and then explicitly the philosophic good, which is directly connected to the political good, so far as the only difference between the political good and the philosophic good is the political good is the good of a specific political community rather than the good of all, of man, as Leo Strauss puts it, and in other words, of all thinking beings. The good can be glossed as follows. An innovation is discovered. The innovation is an objective improvement, meaning an improvement which is independent of any particular intuition by any particular thinking being. Rather, this innovation is good for all thinking beings. Good in the sense one can say that it's just. That which is just is that which the political order should aim at taking as the measure of its comportment. It should act justly. So if we make these small improvements in the highest things, to allude to the standard that Leo Strauss uses, this possibility of coming to a small improvement in our understanding of the highest things, namely of justice, the good, truth, and so forth, but especially justice. This is a question of that which we should follow, if what we want to follow is that which is just. Putting aside the tautology involved, and simply, for instance, identifying the just in the law, and all the difficulties that would follow, what does it mean that we're attempting to find something which it does seem, if you judge just by the experience we're making, by the experience we're fashioning with Heidegger, the de facto, what has happened, one can see that the authentic is always favored, as it were. It seems to be that Heidegger's giving a prescription, be authentic. But then he says authentic and the inauthentic are morally indifferent. So they're indifferent on this plane of justice then. Is it not so? He says that Nietzsche, all Nietzsche's concerns, all of Nietzsche's philosophy, everything that Nietzsche did was about higher justice. and that this wasn't clear to Nietzsche early on, but it came clear in the unfolding of his philosophizing. He says that explicitly in the 38, 39 lectures on the Nietzsche's untimely philosophizing in the second essay on the use and abuse of history. Nietzsche is supposed to be ontic. So we can understand then, just as a technical distinction, this authenticity as a move from Kantian autonomy as taking orders only from the just law, which would be present in the thing in itself, and then which we could make clear to ourselves through the formula of the categorical imperative. And one could say, in further clarification, what it really means is that we take no consideration of the past. Reason takes no consideration of the past, because if an action is just, say, telling the truth, it doesn't matter what happened before in the slightest bit. It doesn't matter that what the circumstances are. In a more clear case, that there's a matter of vengeance or of retribution involved, because something has happened in the past and then it requires some reciprocal act in order to balance out and bring about justice. Justice in this sense is eschewed in the Kantian formula, and the Kantian formula is really seems to be just a different manner, different metaphysical manner, German idealism of reaching the same pith of the Platonic sense of justice, which had been in a way lost in the Christian Middle Ages, because the sense of retribution seems to come in. The sense of history seems to come in some way in the Aristotelian system, which is synthesized by Thomas. So far, then, we could make a technical statement and say, when we're dealing with merely with the ontic justice, which carries on to the end of philosophy, quote unquote, in Nietzsche, we are not dealing with the authentic, which somewhat confusingly we could call authentic ethics or authentic morals, rather than everything which came before. And that, it would seem, just as a technical distinction, just as a rule, would involve Dasein. So then, if we're moving in a genuine understanding of Dasein, in something like this sense that we're not yet thinking, although we're the kind of being that can think, whatever the word can means there, have the ability to, whatever that means with regard to thinking, then that would be the register of the authentic in contradistinction to that which we're not supposed to do, which is to take the authentic as a moral term. It would mean that the authentic can be taken as something we're meant to pursue, but only meant to pursue so far as we sense it out of Dasein. That is all one sortie, as it were, which may prove not to point us in the right direction. I don't know. It's a difficult question, but I think the question is clear. Why is authentic and inauthentic not a moral matter? And yet everywhere we see in the study of Heidegger the sense that the authentic is what we are supposed to be moving towards.